There is a harbor in ancient Athens. The sun sets slowly over the Aegean, and the water turns the color of bronze and gold. Tied to the dock, weathered but proud, sits a ship. This ship carried Theseus to Crete and back. It witnessed the slaying of the Minotaur. It became legend, and so the Athenians preserved it, generation after generation, maintaining it as a monument to their past. But wood decays. The sea is patient and merciless. Salt water penetrates the grain. Sun bleaches and cracks. Storms strain every joint and timber. When the first plank began to rot, they replaced it. Just one plank. New wood fitted perfectly where the old had been. The ship remained, obviously, the same ship. Years passed. Another plank weakened. They replaced it too. Then the mast, stressed by a century of winds, needed rebuilding. The sails, worn thin, were re-sewn with fresh cloth, piece by piece, plank by plank. The maintenance continued across decades, then centuries, until one day, someone realized not a single atom of the original ship remained. Every component had been replaced. The ship that floated in the harbor was constructed entirely of new materials. Yet it looked the same. It functioned the same. It had been called the Ship of Theseus every single day of its existence, in an unbroken chain stretching back to the hero himself. So the question emerged, inevitable as dawn. Is this still the Ship of Theseus? Don't answer yet. Sit with the question. Feel its weight. Your intuition might pull you one way or another. Perhaps you think, of course it's the same ship. It's been the Ship of Theseus, continuously. It never stopped being the Ship of Theseus. The identity persisted, even as the matter changed. Or perhaps you think, how could it be the same ship? Nothing of the original remains. It's a replica, a copy. However perfect, however continuous the process, the original is gone. Both answers feel right. Both answers feel wrong. This is the paradox. Now let me deepen it for you. Thomas Hobbes, the English philosopher, contemplated this paradox in the 17th century. And Hobbes asked us to imagine something more. Suppose the Athenians didn't simply discard the old planks. Suppose they stored them carefully, reverently, in a warehouse. Every original piece of Theseus's ship, catalogued and preserved. Centuries pass. The ship in the harbor has been completely rebuilt with new materials. But in the warehouse, all the original pieces remain. Now imagine someone takes those original pieces and begins to reassemble them. Slowly, carefully, they rebuild a ship using only the authentic, original components. Every plank in its original position. The original configuration restored. Now there are two ships. One ship, let's call it Ship A, contains all new materials, but has existed continuously in the harbor, maintaining an unbroken identity as the Ship of Theseus across all those years. The other ship, Ship B, contains all the original materials, the authentic wood that Theseus himself touched, but it has been disassembled and only recently reconstructed. Which one is the true ship of Theseus? They cannot both be the real ship. One ship cannot be two ships. That violates the basic logic of identity. Can neither be the real ship. Then, what happened to the ship of Theseus? At what moment did it cease to exist? When the first plank was replaced? The 10th? The 1000th? At what point did identity break? This is the Ship of Theseus paradox in its full form, and it opens into an abyss. Philosophers have offered different answers to this paradox. Each answer reveals something about how we think identity works. Some philosophers argue that Ship A, the one that has existed continuously in the harbor, is the true ship of Theseus. This view privileges continuity over material composition. What makes something the same thing across time is not whether it has the same parts, but whether it maintains an unbroken causal chain of existence. Consider a river. The Thames has been the Thames for thousands of years, but the water in the Thames is never the same water. Water flows in from tributaries, flows out to the sea. Every molecule is replaced countless times. Yet we have no trouble calling it the same river. Why? Because the river maintains a continuous existence. There is no moment when the Thames ceases and a new river begins. The form persists. The location persists. The identity persists, even as the water flows and changes. Ship A has existed continuously. Every day, it was called the Ship of Theseus. Every night, it rested in the harbor. There was never a break, never a moment of non-existence. The identity flowed forward like water in a riverbed. Ship B, by contrast, has a discontinuous existence. The original ship was disassembled. For years, perhaps centuries, those planks were not a ship at all. They were stored materials. Then someone assembled them into a ship shape. But that act of reassembly created something new, not restored something old. But there's a problem lurking here. What if the replacement happened faster? What if, in a single night, shipwrights removed every plank and replaced it with a new one? Would it still be the same ship? The continuity remains. The ship never ceased to exist. But something feels different about instant replacement versus gradual replacement. Why should the speed of replacement matter to identity? That seems arbitrary. Strange. Other philosophers take the opposite position. They argue that Ship B, the one constructed from original materials, is the true ship of Theseus. This view privileges material composition. What makes something what it is the actual stuff it's made from. The matter itself carries the identity. Think about it this way. If you have a statue made of marble, and someone makes an exact replica using different marble, you have two distinct statues. The original statue is the one made from the original marble. The identity resides in the material. Similarly, the Ship of Theseus just is those particular planks, that particular wood. When you reassemble them, you restore the ship itself. Ship A, for all its continuous existence, is just a very good replica that gradually replaced the original. We often care deeply about original materials. We distinguish originals from copies. We value authentic artifacts over reproductions, even perfect reproductions. The Mona Lisa, painted by Leonardo, is worth infinitely more than a molecularly identical copy created yesterday. But this view has problems too. If the original planks are what make it the Ship of Theseus, then what happens if those planks decay in storage? What if termites consume half of them? What if we need to replace 10% of the planks because they've deteriorated beyond use? Is Ship B still the real ship if it's only 90% original materials? What about 51%? Where's the threshold? And more troubling, the atoms in wood are constantly exchanging with the environment anyway. Wood absorbs moisture, releases moisture, exchanges carbon and oxygen with the air. The atoms that make up a plank today are not exactly the atoms that made it up a year ago. If we follow this view to its logical conclusion, things stop being themselves moment by moment as atoms are exchanged. That makes identity impossibly fragile. A third group of philosophers offers a different answer entirely. They suggest that both ships are, in a sense, the Ship of Theseus. Or more precisely, that the Ship of Theseus refers to a form, a pattern, and both ships instantiate that form. This view comes from a more Platonic understanding of identity. What makes something what it is isn't the matter or the continuity, but the form, the arrangement, the structure, the functional organization. Think of a song. When you hear Imagine by John Lennon, you're not hearing the original sound waves from 1971. You're hearing a recreation. Yet we say you're hearing the same song. Why? Because the song is not the particular sound waves. The song is the pattern, the sequence of notes, the rhythm, the melody. Any physical instantiation of that pattern is the song. Similarly, the Ship of Theseus is a pattern, a form. Both Ship A and Ship B instantiate that pattern. Therefore, both are, in a meaningful sense, the Ship of Theseus. This view dissolves the paradox by rejecting its premise. It denies that there must be one and only one true Ship of Theseus. But this creates strange implications. If both ships are the Ship of Theseus, then the Ship of Theseus exists in two places simultaneously. Can one thing be in two places? Or are there now two ships of Theseus? But then the original ship has somehow multiplied. And what if someone builds a third ship, using different materials, but matching the exact form and function? Is that also the Ship of Theseus? How many can there be? There's a fourth position, darker and more radical. Some philosophers argue that the paradox reveals a fundamental truth. There is no fact of the matter about which ship is the real Ship of Theseus, because identity itself is not a feature of objective reality. Identity is a human construct. It's a useful fiction we employ to navigate the world, but it doesn't correspond to anything real. Reality, at its most fundamental level, is just particles arranged in various configurations, changing moment by moment according to physical laws. There are no enduring objects, no persistent identities, no things that remain the same across time. We call certain configurations the Ship of Theseus because it's useful for communication and cognition. But that label doesn't point to any objective sameness. It's just a convention. From this view, asking which ship is really the Ship of Theseus is like asking which direction is really up. Up is relative to a frame of reference. There's no absolute up in the universe. Similarly, identity is relative to our conceptual frameworks. This view is philosophically sophisticated. It cuts through the paradox by denying that the question has any objective answer. But it's also deeply unsettling. If there are no persistent identities, then there is no persistent you. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago or 5 minutes ago. Each moment brings a new configuration of matter that we conventionally call by your name. But there's no real continuity, no real self. There's a fourth position, darker and more radical. Some philosophers argue that the paradox reveals a fundamental truth. There is no fact of the matter about which ship is the real Ship of Theseus, because identity itself is not a feature of objective reality. Identity is a human construct. It's a useful fiction we employ to navigate the world, but it doesn't correspond to anything real. Reality, at its most fundamental level, is just particles arranged in various configurations, changing moment by moment according to physical laws. There are no enduring objects, no persistent identities, no things that remain the same across time. We call certain configurations the Ship of Theseus because it's useful for communication and cognition. But that label doesn't point to any objective sameness. It's just a convention. From this view, asking which ship is really the Ship of Theseus is like asking which direction is really up. Up is relative to a frame of reference. There's no absolute up in the universe. Similarly, identity is relative to our conceptual frameworks. This view is philosophically sophisticated. It cuts through the paradox by denying that the question has any objective answer. But it's also deeply unsettling. If there are no persistent identities, then there is no persistent you. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago or 5 minutes ago. Each moment brings a new configuration of matter that we conventionally call by your name. But there's no real continuity, no real self. There's another thought experiment that deepens this mystery. Imagine a teleportation device. You step into it on Earth. It scans every atom of your body, recording their exact positions and states. Then it disintegrates your body completely. The information is transmitted to Mars, where a machine reconstructs you atom by atom, perfectly. The reconstruction has all your memories, your personality, your sense of being you. From its perspective, It simply stepped into a machine on Earth and stepped out on Mars. Did you survive the teleportation? Or did you die on Earth and a replica was created on Mars? Most people's initial intuition is that you died. The original you was destroyed. What emerges on Mars is a copy, however perfect. But then consider, what if the machine didn't destroy the original? What if you stepped into the machine, it scanned you, and created a replica on Mars, but you remained standing on Earth? Now there are two of you. Same memories, same personality, same sense of identity. Both think they're you. Which one is really you? If you say the original on Earth is the real you, then you're privileging material continuity. But we know from physics that atoms don't have identity. One electron is completely indistinguishable from every other electron in the universe. Electrons don't have serial numbers. They're generic, interchangeable. So the atoms that make up you on Earth are not inherently yours in any meaningful sense. They're just atoms, identical to countless other atoms. If atoms are interchangeable, then what makes the Earth you more real than the Mars you? Maybe it's the continuity of consciousness. The Earth you experienced an unbroken stream of consciousness. The Mars you came into existence suddenly, but you lose consciousness every night when you sleep. Deep, dreamless sleep involves a genuine discontinuity of consciousness. The you who wakes up is, in terms of conscious experience, a different instance than the you who fell asleep. We have memories that bridge the gap, creating narrative continuity. But memories can be false, implanted, or mistaken. Some philosophers and neuroscientists argue that the self is an illusion, a story the brain tells itself. There is no persistent you sitting behind your eyes, watching and experiencing. There's just a flow of perceptions, thoughts, and sensations, and the brain constructs a narrative of a unified self to make sense of that flow. Buddhism has taught this for millennia. Anatta, the doctrine of non-self. The self is empty, impermanent, a construct rather than a reality. But even if we intellectually accept this, emotionally, we resist it. We cling to our sense of self. We fear death, not as the cessation of processes, but as the loss of me. The Ship of Theseus asks, what is that me you're afraid of losing? Is it your body? Your body is already being lost, cell by cell. Is it your memories? Your memories are already being transformed. Is it your consciousness? Your consciousness is interrupted every night. Is it your personality? Your personality has changed dramatically over your lifetime. Is it your atoms? Your atoms are generic and mostly replaced. So what is it? What is this you that you believe persists? The Ship of Theseus has real, practical implications in law, ethics, and everyday life. Consider legal identity. If someone commits a crime, and then every cell in their body is replaced over the next 7 years, Are they still the same person who committed the crime? Our legal system says yes. We believe in persistent personal identity. The person who committed the crime is the same person who stands trial. But we also recognize that people change. We have statutes of limitations. We consider rehabilitation. We acknowledge that a 70-year-old person may not be morally identical to who they were at 20. Our legal system contains the same tension. We need identity to persist for accountability, but we also recognize that identity changes. Consider restoration and authenticity. Museums restore paintings, sometimes replacing significant portions of the original canvas. Archaeologists reconstruct ancient buildings using mostly new stones. Historical ships are maintained in floating condition by replacing planks continuously. In each case, we face the Ship of Theseus. Question: is this the authentic artifact, or is it a replica? Usually, we privilege continuity. The restored painting is considered the original if it was restored gradually, maintaining continuous existence. But a newly painted copy would not be the original, even if molecularly identical. Why? Because we value the causal chain, the historical continuity, the unbroken connection to the past. Consider personal relationships. You love someone. Over decades, they change physically and psychologically. Their personality shifts. Their beliefs evolve. They become, in many ways, a different person. Do you still love the same person? Most people would say yes. Love tracks identity through change. But what are we actually loving? The physical body that's been replaced? The personality that's evolved? The memories we share, which have also changed? Perhaps we love the pattern, the process, the continuity itself. We love the flow, not the snapshot. Consider cryonics. Some people have their bodies frozen after death, hoping that future technology will revive them. But suppose the revival involves gradually replacing damaged cells with artificial ones, or using the frozen brain as a template to construct a new body with an identical brain structure. Would the revived person be you, or a copy of you? If someone you loved was revived this way, would you embrace them as the same person returned? Or would you see them as an imitation, a stranger wearing your loved one's face? The answer reveals what you really believe about identity. Let's drift into physics for a moment, because quantum mechanics adds a strange twist to this paradox. In quantum mechanics, particles don't have definite identities. An electron here and an electron there are fundamentally indistinguishable. If you swap them, you haven't changed anything about the system. This is called the indistinguishability of particles. It means that matter, at its most fundamental level, has no persistent identity. You cannot tag an electron and follow it through time. So when your body replaces atoms, it's not even meaningful to ask whether the new atoms are different atoms. They're just atoms, identical to the old atoms in every possible way. This suggests that material continuity cannot ground identity, because matter itself has no continuity of identity at the quantum level. Quantum entanglement and holographic principles suggest something even stranger. Information about a system is not contained solely in the parts, but in the relationships between parts. And those relationships can be distributed across space in non-local ways. Perhaps your identity is not localized in your brain or body, but exists as a pattern of relationships. Relationships between neurons, between body and environment, between past and future states. If identity is relational rather than substantial, then the Ship of Theseus paradox dissolves. There is no thing that persists or fails to persist. There's only a network of relationships, and as long as those relationships are maintained sufficiently, identity is maintained. But this is speculative. Physics doesn't give us clear answers about identity. It does, however, undermine the intuitive assumptions that make the paradox seem simple. Perhaps the question itself is wrong. Perhaps identity is not a thing we have, but a process we are. Not a noun, but a verb. You are not a ship that endures. You are a shipping, a continual process of becoming, a pattern that propagates forward through time, changing and adapting, never the same, yet never completely different. The river flows. We call it the Thames, but the Thames is not a thing. It's a flow, a process, a pattern of water moving through a landscape. Maybe you're like that. Not a thing, but a process. Not a fixed identity, but a dynamic pattern. Consider a flame. A candle burns. The flame looks stable, persistent, but the flame is not made of any particular molecules. It's a process, a chemical reaction. Matter flows through the flame, is transformed, and flows out. The flame is a pattern of energy and matter in flux. Yet we have no trouble identifying it as the same flame across time. Perhaps you are like the flame, a pattern maintained by constant flow and transformation. This view doesn't solve the paradox in the traditional sense. It doesn't tell us which ship is the real ship. Instead, it suggests the question is malformed. There is no real ship in the sense of a fixed, enduring substance. There are only patterns, processes, flows. And we apply the label Ship of Theseus to certain configurations that maintain sufficient continuity and similarity. The boundaries are fuzzy, not sharp. Identity is a matter of degree, not an all-or-nothing fact. This is unsettling if you want clear answers, but it's liberating if you can accept it. You are not a fixed thing that must remain unchanged to be yourself. You are a process, a flow. You can change profoundly and still be you. Because being you is not about sameness. It's about continuity of pattern. The caterpillar becomes the butterfly. Almost everything changes. The body is restructured. The form is transformed. Yet there is continuity. The butterfly is the same organism, the same life. even though almost nothing material connects them. Perhaps human identity is like that. Perhaps the child you were and the adult you are connected not by shared matter or even shared memories, but by a continuous process of transformation. You are always becoming who you will be, never fixed, never final, always in motion. So where does this leave us? After all this contemplation, have we solved the Ship of Theseus paradox? And that's okay. Some philosophical problems are not meant to be solved. They're meant to be lived with, to be turned over in the mind, to be felt rather than answered. The Ship of Theseus teaches us that identity is mysterious, that the self is not as solid or simple as it seems, that persistence through time is a deeper puzzle than we usually acknowledge. It teaches us humility. We don't understand what we are as well as we think we do. But it also teaches us something beautiful. Despite the mystery, despite the paradox, we continue. Something persists. You woke up this morning and felt yourself to be you. You'll wake up tomorrow and feel the same. That continuity of experience, that sense of being a unified self across time, is real, even if we can't fully explain it philosophically. Maybe the Ship of Theseus is the same ship. Maybe it's a different ship. Maybe the question has no answer, but the ship still sails, and you still are. Let these thoughts settle. Now, there's no need to resolve them, no need to choose an answer. Just rest with the mystery. You are a process, a pattern, a flow. Every cell in your body will be replaced. Every thought you think will fade. Every memory will transform. And yet you will continue, in some sense, as you always have. Not as a fixed thing, but as a living question. A ship sailing forward through time, its planks constantly replaced, yet somehow still itself. The same and not the same. Continuous and ever-changing. The ancient Greeks understood something profound when they preserved that ship in their harbor. They were preserving not just a physical object, but a question, a mirror held up to existence itself. And now, thousands of years later, we sit with the same question they sat with, the same wonder, the same uncertainty. In the harbor of Athens, the ship rests. Or perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps it's gone. Perhaps it's multiplied. Perhaps it was never really there in the first place. But the question remains. And the question is enough. You are the Ship of Theseus. And you sail on through dark waters and light, through change and constancy, through death and renewal, always becoming, never arriving. A paradox, yes, but a beautiful one. Let yourself drift now. Let the questions fade into the background like distant harbor lights. You don't need to know which ship is real. You only need to sail. And you do, every moment, every breath, sailing forward into the mystery of what you are. The waves lap gently against the hull. The stars wheel overhead. The sea stretches endless in all directions, and somewhere in a harbor that may or may not exist, in a time that may or may not have passed, a ship waits. Or perhaps it's already sailed away. Or perhaps it was always sailing and will sail forever through transformations we cannot imagine, toward destinations we cannot name. The Ship of Theseus. Your ship. My ship. The same ship carrying us all through the dark waters of existence. Let it carry you now into sleep, into dreams, into the quiet mystery of being. You are. And that is enough.